Hello and welcome to Indus News Live with me, Usman Lone. We begin this hour with our top story, and that's with the Pakistan Army expressing anguish over the death sentence given to former President Pervez Musharraf. The reaction came hours after a special court found Musharraf guilty of subverting the constitution in November 2007. In a statement, the Army's media wing says the legal process seems to have ignored the right to self-defense. It said Musharraf served the country for over 40 years and he could never be a traitor. It added the case was concluded hastily. The Army said it expects justice to be dispensed according to the Constitution. The former president is currently in Dubai after being allowed to leave the country for medical treatment in 2016. He's rejected the charges against him. In occupied Kashmir, Indian forces killed 3 Kashmiris during a military operation in Rajouri district. Kashmir has been under a curfew and communications blackout since India stripped the region of its autonomy on the 5th of August. Internet services remain suspended in the area to curb protests, so it's unclear how many people have been killed by Indian forces. The United Nations Security Council is scheduled to meet today in New York to discuss the situation in Kashmir. Well, in India, a massive protest has broken out in New Delhi as anger at a citizenship law spreads across the country. Local reports say several protesters and policemen have been injured in the clashes. Now, the protest comes days after clashes between police and protesters in the capital left at least 150 students injured. More in this report.
The recently enacted citizenship law offers nationality to non-Muslims from 3 nearby countries. Demonstrators across the country are demanding the government take back the legislation. Now, students from across the country have joined the protest after police stormed the Jamia Millia Islamia University in New Delhi.
The police started beating us and abusing us in a very communal way. I believe in a certain faith. So I said, Ya Allah. And they started saying, you guys are terrorists.
Protesters say the new Citizenship Act is an attempt to marginalize Muslims who are already fleeing the heat of the government policies based on extremist ideologies.
They are trying to divide our country. Hindus, Muslims, Sikh. We are all humans first, so we don't want cab.
So far, 6 people have been killed and over 200 injured during clashes with security forces in northeast India. Amnesty International condemned the crackdown on demonstrators and called for an end to the violence.
Well, in Geneva, the United Nations conducted its first ever Global Refugee Forum to find solutions to the global refugee crisis. Speaking at the event, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan said his country is hosting over 3 million Afghanistanis. This report has more. The Global Refugee Forum in Geneva is discussing ways to deal with the worldwide refugee crisis. The event is being hosted by the UNHCR and Switzerland. Prime Minister Imran Khan warned the international community of an impending refugee crisis due to India's harsh policies. He was referring to the ongoing curfew in occupied Kashmir and India's new controversial citizenship law. Prime Minister Khan urged the world to put pressure on India to prevent a crisis.
Since 5th of August, 8 million Kashmiris have been literally shut inside. Their rights have been taken, people have been imprisoned, the leaders are in jail, all communication has been cut off. But the most important thing which the world needs to understand is that the professed aim is to change the demography of Kashmir from a Muslim majority to a Muslim minority. Now, if this is what the professed aim is, we are likely to have another refugee crisis.
UN Chief Antonio Guterres said more international cooperation is needed to address the issue.
And I've always been amazed by the generosity of least developed and middle-income countries that have hosted millions of refugees with very little support from the international community, but with an enormous generosity. And I learned that generosity is not always proportional to wealth.
There are currently over 70 million people worldwide who have been displaced by war, conflict or persecution. 25 million of these people are refugees who've crossed international boundaries and can't return to their homes. US Defense Secretary Mark Esper says he wants to cut troop numbers in Afghanistan with or without a peace deal. Esper says the head of the NATO mission in Afghanistan, Austin Miller, is confident that he can reduce the number of US troops there. According to US officials, the Trump administration is expected to announce the withdrawal of about 4,000 troops from Afghanistan this week. US Senator Lindsey Graham says Pakistan can accelerate the peace process in Afghanistan. He also backed reducing the number of US troops in the country.
The relationship that President Trump has with Pakistan could change behavior in a way that would really accelerate the chance for peace. We all know that if Pakistan applied more pressure on the Taliban, it would be enormously helpful to resolving the conflict here.
10 people have been killed in an IED blast in Afghanistan. The Interior Minister says members of the same family were travelling when their car hit a roadside bomb. 3 children and 2 women are among the dead in Aishar district. The ministry blamed the Taliban for the attack, but no one has claimed responsibility yet. Russia and China have proposed easing UN sanctions against North Korea. In a draft resolution, both countries suggested relaxing the curbs if Pyongyang commits to denuclearization. The 2 countries argue that reducing sanctions will encourage the North to resume talks. Meanwhile, the US has dismissed the proposal, calling it a premature relief. Officials said the UN should reject the proposal as Pyongyang is threatening to conduct missile tests and refusing to talk. Earlier, President Donald Trump said he'll be disappointed if something was in the works in North Korea, and he said the US was watching activities in the country very closely. Now, the United Nations says it has no choice but to keep shipping humanitarian aid across Syria's borders. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the bloc didn't have any other way to reach people in need. A report submitted to the UN Security Council said over 6 million people receive food and medical treatment in the country. Security Council members have proposed a 1-year renewal of the aid operation as its mandate expires on the 10th of January. But Russia wants a 6-month renewal that ignores Guterres' statement regarding cross-border assistance. Moscow has also proposed closing 2 of the current 4 entry points to Syria used for aid. Venezuela's parliament has approved a trial on 4 opposition lawmakers for treason and conspiracy. Chief Prosecutor Tariq Saab accused the politicians of conspiring to seize military installations. The pro-government assembly voted unanimously to revoke the politicians' immunity after a request by Venezuela's top court. Constituent Assembly President Diosdado Cabello said justice will be served.
The magistrate hereby requests the continuation of the trial to these gentlemen in the ordinary court, and I want to put it to a vote. There has to be justice here one day.
In Malaysia, the Prime Minister's office refutes media reports that quoted Mahathir Mohamad saying the Kuala Lumpur summit aims to replace the OIC. The office said the summit is an NGO initiative supported by the Malaysian government. They said it's not a platform to discuss religious affairs, but specifically to address the issues concerning the Islamic world. The 5th edition of the summit is scheduled to start tomorrow. Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Hello again, it's good to have you back. Now, 3 people died as tornadoes wreaked havoc across the southeastern United States. A couple were killed in northern Alabama, while an elderly woman lost her life in Louisiana. Officials say the storms ripped through buildings, damaged trees and pulled down power lines. They say the most damage was reported in Alabama, Louisiana and Texas. A power outage website said almost 30,000 people suffered electricity failures. Heavy rain and wind are expected today as the storms push off into southeastern Georgia and Florida. 14 people have been killed in a coal mine blast in southwest China. Government officials say 2 miners are still trapped underground after the explosion at the mine in Guizhou province. Officials say 7 workers were lifted to safety after the accident and rescue work is continuing. The accident is the latest in a series of mining incidents in China. Earlier on Saturday, flooding in a mine in Sichuan province killed 5 and trapped 13 miners underground. An Australian court has sentenced 2 brothers to a total of 76 years in prison for planning to blow up an Etihad Airways flight. The 2 men were convicted of planning a terrorist attack on a flight from Sydney to Abu Dhabi in July 2017. The New South Wales Supreme Court sentenced Khalid Khayat to 40 years in prison with no parole until 2047. His brother Mahmoud Khayat was sentenced to 36 years in prison with no parole until 2044. Khalid and Mahmoud Khayat were arrested during police raids in Sydney. The police say high-grade explosives used to make the bomb were flown from Turkey as part of a terror plot by ISIS. 2 men have been arrested for smuggling 645 kilograms of ecstasy hidden inside hundreds of aluminium barbecues. Police say it's the largest drug shipment seized in Australia this year. Officials said a 30-year-old man from Queensland and a 33-year-old Canadian national had been charged. Authorities made the arrest after a 6-month investigation that also involved Cyprus and the United Kingdom. Police found 200 aluminium barbecues with false base plates concealing multiple packages of the illegal drug. Now, in other news, police have rescued a 12-year-old boy who fled a raging bushfire in Western Australia by driving his brother's pickup truck to safety with their dog. This report has more.
Lucas Torok was alone at home when his father and brother were fighting a bushfire at Mogumber. When the fire, which has burnt over 7,500 hectares, approached the house, Lucas grabbed his dog and drove to a pre-arranged meeting spot. Fortunately, local fire crews managed to find the boy.
It was a pretty scary environment, like lots of smoke, visibility was very low, you could see the flames, they were quite high, so it was an active fire ground.
His father said he was relieved and emotional when police returned Lucas to their home.
Very emotional, yes, yeah. It was just one relief, a big relief. There was a few tears, yeah, for sure.
Across parts of the eastern state of New South Wales, temperatures are expected to top 40 degrees Celsius tomorrow. Firefighters say they will not be able to contain the fires, while conditions are expected to deteriorate this week.
A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket has launched into a massive satellite into orbit from Florida to provide communications in the Asia-Pacific region. The rocket carried the satellite into the air above Cape Canaveral. After a successful launch, the Falcon 9 booster came back to Earth, landing on a drone ship in the Atlantic. The satellite reached orbit minutes later. Recovery boats were deployed off the coast to catch the 2 halves of the fairing, but narrowly missed them. The company said a team is working to recover them for potential use on a future flight. In Peru, Edgar and Dominic are conjoined twins who have been surgically separated. The operation was a success and the twins have arrived home after recovering at a hospital in Lima. More in this report.
A Peruvian mother of conjoined twins is celebrating a Christmas miracle this year. Her babies came home for the first time after going through a successful 18-hour operation. Cases like theirs are extremely rare, occurring once every 200,000 births.
This is the first case in the country with Siamese twins that were born joined by this part that are Chiapogas twins, which was achieved through the work of the entire team. It's a success and also a miracle.
The surgery involved more than 40 medical specialists, including pediatric surgeons, radiologists.
It's a Christmas miracle. I spent last Christmas hospitalized from the cesarean and them as well. We did not spend it together, and this Christmas I am going to spend it with my family and with them. And it's their first year. That was my Christmas gift. I wanted them to be here with me, separated.
Research shows 40 to 60% of conjoined twins arrive stillborn, and about 35% live only 1 day. The mortality rates for twins who do live and then undergo separation vary, depending on the type of connection and the organs they share.
Well, New York City has just got a whole lot brighter, with the City Field hosting the largest lantern festival in North America. The event, called the Hello Panda Festival, commandeered 700,000 square feet of space to entertain guests with a multi-sensory experience. More about the festival in this report.
New York City's Hello Panda Festival is a social media ready affair with 120 Instagrammable lantern exhibits containing more than 10 million handcrafted and hand-painted lights. The displays include a 60-foot-high lantern Christmas tree, a 98-foot panda light tunnel, and lantern dinosaurs.
Welcome to our Hello Panda Festival at the City Field, New York. We create this magical world of lanterns to welcome the New York families, welcome the kids, students, all the New Yorkers to join us for the Christmas season.
Beyond the light show, the event also features some 60 international food vendors in a wide variety of world's cultural arts.
This place is awesome. It's so much fun for the kids, for the adults. It's a great thing to do in the city over the holidays. We're really happy that we came all the way from Manhattan.
Where you can take photos and stuff. So that was my favorite part, but I also like the other ones. So it's kind of really hard to choose.
The Lantern Festival is on until January 26th.
Well, we'll be back with news from the world of business and sports right after this break, so do stay with us. Hello, welcome back. Now in business news, US stocks are stable after 4 straight days of gains. The Dow Jones average is trading fractionally higher. The S&P 500 index also trading marginally higher, while the Nasdaq lost a fraction. In Europe, stocks traded lower as caution returned following a worldwide rally on the back of a Phase 1 US-China trade deal. Now, Japan says it will continue to resolve trade issues with South Korea. Japanese and South Korean trade officials met for the first time since Tokyo imposed controls on exports in July. Japan's Trade Minister Hiroshi Kajiyama said a better understanding of export control systems has been reached. He said the next round of trade talks between the two countries will be held in Seoul in the near future.
We were also able to discuss about updating and improving each country's export control system. In order to resolve our issues, we hope to continue our dialogue and communication on export controls. We are planning to hold the next meeting for trade talks in Seoul in the near future.
Well, it's 10 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore, but we'll be back at the top of the hour with the headlines. And don't forget, for the latest updates on all of our stories, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Thank you for watching and bye-bye.